This lecture summary was brought to you by KidSense Media.
The whole, what is this organisational thing? Oh dear. The trouble is that we tend to assume that organisation is something that just osmotically appears. And it doesn't. We know this because the kids for whom it's tricky find it really, really tricky. And often we as parents don't have the strategies necessary to actually teach it. So the trick is that organisation really involves the ability to put steps together and to do it in the right order and to do it before the crisis occurs. It develops at home. It starts pre-kindy. And here we are often as teachers dealing with it more in junior primary, and boys at a longer slog at that point. So the more we can get this stuff happening earlier on, the better off we all are, of course. So what you'll tend to find is the kids that are scattered in their play look scattered when they get to school too. Most of us have strategies in place that we don't recognise that we use. So we haven't got a structure by which to impart that to our little people. And that's assuming that their learning is easy. If you look at most of the kids that we're seeing who have organisational difficulties, at some point in their learning career they're diagnosed as having ADD or ADHD, some form of dyslexia, some kind of anxiety issues, potentially autism spectrum, even on the milder end. So often there's lots of other issues going on, and this is what grabs our attention, and the organisation just gets lost right on in the mess of the challenges. So the trouble is, of course, not only did these kids have difficulty at school, but also, as we'd appreciate from teachers' point of view, they spread that kerfuffle around so that mum and dad gets lost in the, I didn't bring my homework, or I forgot my project, so I know what to do over the weekend. So it tends to be a really shared experience, and this is what we're looking about, how we can help to develop that. So in terms of adults, what we find is, unfortunately, that, and I'm not going to draw a comparison between poorly organised children and sometimes parents that have some of the same stuff. What I'll say is that some of the parents find it difficult to teach the skills, because the easier thing to do is to recognise, oh, he's so disorganised. And what I so often hear are parents saying, oh, Johnny, you're so disorganised, you just forgot it again. So what we're doing is inadvertently setting kids up to remind them that they're badly organised, not to provide the strategies to support it, because that's the harder bit. So our job as adults and teachers is to make, and parents, is to make that decision around either we accept this as it is, or we get on and actually make some changes and be a very positive life force. So not surprisingly, we're looking to do things like checklists, especially for the kids who can't tell you what order those things need to go on in. So we're looking at either things like this, where you actually map out in a sequence what needs to happen, or where people are being a bit clever, strategies where you've actually got, right, before I get to watch television or watch the video, the things I need to do are these things in an order. So no doubt you've seen all these visuals where you then take them off and pop them in the finish box. But if you're clever, you've also got them predetermined on a stick that you pop onto the bit instead of having to make each combination each day. This is exactly the same kind of thing that we'd be looking at in the classroom for the routines, like put your reader away, put your homework in the bag, whatever it is that needs to be done. The thing I'm learning more and more, particularly using those hand-drawn visuals, is help kids to know how many times they have to do something, and that it may well be, even if they get it wrong, they've still attempted the task, so that the attempt counts as a yes, you've done it. Otherwise, what we'll find is, of course, they get to the point they just dreadfully hate it. The biggest challenge, I think, for these students is helping to break activities down into small enough chunks. We're assuming that for our typical learners, they learn step 1, step 2, step 3. The trouble is that within each of those steps, there may well be 10 small steps that we need to break the activity down for our students. And that is the hardest thing, I think, to keep doing. And perhaps the most significant thing I want to share with you is don't give kids the answer, because giving them the answer just means they come back to you for the answer each and every time. Coming up with that how do I begin to develop a solution is actually really important, as much as it is from a physical point of view as well as the planning. So let me just say once again, whilst we've talked here about these being the solutions for how you work one-to-one with students, it's equally important within the classroom environment to make sure that we adjust our support so they don't become prompt dependent. But having said that, the thing that I speak with parents an awful lot about is if you're going to put all of these strategies in place, we want to then make sure that actually there are consequences if the system isn't followed. Now, I recognise that we're talking about kids for whom planning is hard, and everything in our soft heart says, oh no, I won't do that because he finds that really hard and he's tired today and therefore it's harder. Absolutely given. I'm talking about when you've got these systems in place, you're using checklists, you're using visuals, and the consequences are absolutely known up front. You have to use them. The trick then, of course, is, first of all, go at the child's pace in terms of the strategies that you use and remove them as quickly as you can, but without the house of cards falling down. But the absolute biggie is don't rescue. So provide the solutions, help work out the solutions, but not the answers. And follow through on your consequences.